Okay, so we pick up at the bottom of 68b, about 6 lines from the bottom, 7 lines from the bottom at the colon. So yesterday we had three brises about what's considered a sufficient wage or compensation for the borrower, so that it's so that what he's getting is not considered interest on the loan or on the investment, or rather it's considered a wage. So Amar of Nachman, Rav Nachman said, Halacha Rabbi Yehuda. We rule like Rabbi Yehuda, who said in one of those brises that a minimal, that was the case of the even dipping fish into brine, together with the investor slash lender, is considered compensation. So a very minimal amount of compensation is sufficient. Halacha Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, and also the brise about uh, taking if you're looking after, if the investment is in a goat or a sheep, so taking the whey or the pieces of wool that get brushed off, that in the bushes or something, that's sufficient wages. And then the third brisa that if you have a baby calf along with a cow, then there isn't much work for you, but there's a minimal amount of work to also look after the baby cow. That's sufficient compensation. Now we have an incident, a case study. B'nai Rav Elish Nafik Alayu Hoshtara. There was a shtar, a contract that was signed by Rav Elish, and after his death, the estate, the children, the inheritors, they were this contract came to light. The Havakasi Bay, what was in the contract? Palga Bagar, Palga Behefsed. It's a half and half deal. Rav Elish was going to look after this investment, or pursue this venture with someone else's money. In return for, they were going to split the losses or um, profits. But there was no fee in it, no compensation. So Amar Rava, so Rava said, Rav Elish Gavar Rava, look, Rav Elish he's a somebody, right? He knew what he was doing. He wouldn't have participated in a contract that specified interest. So Manashach. So there must be one of the two following situations. Ipal Gabagar. Uh, so no, Manashach would be like, this is what the contract must mean. Um, it's your choice, Rav Elish, in the contract. Ipal Gabagar, if you want half the profits, Trey Tilte Behefsed, then the investor will take on himself 2/3 of the losses, and you'll only be responsible for 1/3. Or if you choose to be liable for half the losses, then trei tilte bagar, then you'll be entitled to 2/3 of the profits. So in other words, it's not a 50-50 deal after all. There are 50s involved, but there's extra benefit due to Rav Elish. It's not just a splitting of profits, and so that extra benefit to him in the contract is considered the compensation. Rav Kahana says, "What's that?" Retail Shmata Kami to Rav Zvid Minada. I told this story to Rav Zvid. The Amalei, he said, "Dilma Rav Elish Tovel Imo Batzir Hava." No, that's not a good answer. It must be that outside of the written contract, that there was Rav Elish got some benefit, like some minor benefit, like dipping their fish together in brine, and that was the wage. So in other words, he doesn't like the reinterpretation of the contract. He's saying the contract is what it is. It's left out the fact that Rav Elish must have gotten the wage. Otherwise, how can we can't understand it? Rav Nachman had already says that even that minimum wage is sufficient. Amarle, so Rav Kana answers, Love Hilchos Mar. No, you're misunderstanding Rav Nachman. um, you're misunderstanding Rav Nachman. It's not that we rule like Rabbi Yehuda, Elashita Idmar. He's saying that they all have the same, all these three brises all have the same logic, right? That they all are basically trying to say a minimal compensation is sufficient to be compensation, and make it not a rebus deal. Okay, let me stop. Right, and this also makes sense. If you don't say that, why did he say halacha like this, halacha like this, halacha like this one? Lema halacha Rabbi Yehuda. He should have said, the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, the mekel mikulhu, who is the most lenient, right? That's like the smallest, the lowest amount of the minimal compensation. So just say that, and that includes all the other ones. The fact that he's saying, well, halacha is like this one, like this one, like this one, means he's really saying that they all have the same theory. That, in other words, that a minimal compensation is sufficient. Rav says, most are shlish b'scharcha. Let's say the lender says to the borrower, or the investor says to the guy who's doing the work, anything more than a third will that of any profits that are more than a third of the investment will be scharcha, will be a wage. That's okay. So what happens if that doesn't make sense? Because what happens if the investment isn't so successful and there isn't a third, doesn't make 30%, right? So then he gets no, he goes home empty-handed. Um, uh, um, Yeah, he's not getting any wages in that case. Elamar Shmuel, Kotzetz lo dinar. The way you have to do it is, give a fixed wage, give a dinar that you can do that deal. You can say, anything more than a third profit belongs to you, but if there's less than a third profit, you still get something, right? And that's the something that will be the compensation in that case. The Sover Rav ain't Kotzin lo dinar. So what? Rav didn't agree with Shmuel, that you have to specify that he gets some wages in any case, Vama Rav. But we have another statement of Rav. Reish Egla Lifatoma. The head of the calf goes to the one who fattens it. Right. So in other words, the one who fattens it is the guy who's doing the work, who we could call the borrower or the manager. He gets the best part of the calf, the head. My love, doesn't this mean diamarle moser shlish b'scharcha? Aren't we talking about a case where, like, why is he promising them the head? He's saying we're trying to interpret this statement of Rav as, look, you're going to get anything over a third of the profit you're going to get, right? But in case that doesn't happen, you're still getting the head, right? So this statement that you're going to get the head, isn't that doesn't that Rav signed on to, doesn't that indicate that you have to have some contingency for if there's not sufficient profit, that the guy's still going to get payment? Mar says, well, that's not what Rav's talking about. Amarle, rather, what Rav is talking about is imosar shlish iresh egla lefatoma. No, imosar shlish. Either you're getting anything over a third of the profit, iresh egla lefatoma, or the head of the calf. How is that different? So we're allowing the investor to choose, right? That's what Rav is saying. That the investor, what Rav's case is about is when the investor says, I will choose whether to give you excess above 30% profit, or if I choose to split it with you or let you have the head of the calf. So it's not against what Shmuel says. Or you could say, Kikama Rav, Moser Shlish B'scharcha Mutar, Mosar, wait a minute, Ibaisema, Kikama Rav, Moser Shlish B'scharcha Mutar. When Rav says that more than a third, anything more than a third will be your wages, that condition is okay. Kigon de Isle Behema Ladide. That's where the borrower already has a herd of animals, right? So he's not like, what is the extra effort? It's like nothing to take care of one more animal in your herd. The Amrinshes, because people will say, Gabil Torah, like it doesn't take any more effort to prepare feed for one ox or a bunch of oxes. Like once you're already doing it, there's no extra effort in adding on one more ox. So in that case, you have to guarantee the head of the calf to the borrower because otherwise he's not there's nothing to compensate him for. There's no compensation that he's going to get.
There seemed
Okay.
to be shifting early in the beginning when we talked about Rav Elish. It seemed to be a business deal between
Mm-hmm.
a partner, and then
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about investment. Now we're talking a borrower. So I'm not sure that it's the same case. I mean,
Well,
look,
I'm using the terms interchangeably because what the Gemara is really, the whole point of this is that investing in a business deal in which you're going to get profit from is the same as a loan to a borrower who's going to give you a share of the profits, right? The whole point of this rebus idea in business deals is that there's actually no difference between lending someone money for interest or investing money with someone for profit. So I'm using the terms interchangeably to reflect that.
but if two
Okay, but
people are
the
investing,
Gemara's idea is that these are really the same things, regardless of what you call them. You're giving somebody else money to use and taking a profit from it and taking more money back.
I see. So he's giving
Call
money,
that a loan, call it an investment, it's the same thing.
but if they invested equally, that would be different, right?
Right. So yeah, so that's the case of Metzia, right? So I think we've seen a little of that, and I think we'll see some more of that coming up.
Mhm.
But the no, but wait a minute. But the truth is, if they each invest half of the money, yeah, I'm not sure. I think we'll see some details of that. But you could make the case that if they're each investing money, then they each get half the profit. Then that's not a rebus thing.
Right.
Okay. Rabbi Elazar mehagronia zavin behema. Blazer bought an animal. V'yivle Larissa and gave it to his sharecropper. And the deal was, you raise the animal and it's my animal, but you raise it and we'll split the profit or the loss. Mafatim le, so he does so. V'yivle Reisha Bagre. So Blazer gave him the head of the calf as his wage. So in other words, they did 50-50, but Blazer gave the sharecropper the better part. And he also gave him half the profit. So not only did he get 50% of the profit, he also got the better part, the head. Amrle Devesu. So the wife, the sharecropper's wife, said, if you had invested with him, if you had been an equal partner in the investment, Yav Lach Name Alisa, then he would have also given you the tail, right? So Azal Zavin Bahade. So the sharecropper says, you know what? That's a good idea. I'm going to buy an animal together with Rav Elazar. Polyglay Mealisa. And when it came time to share the profit, the Rav Elazar gives him half of the tail, and not the head, right? So he lost out. Amalei Tanifla gave Lareshe. So and Rabbi Elazar said, you know what? We'll also divide the head, right? So he's not giving him the head anymore. Amalei, so the sharecropper says to him, Hasha Kamei Kara Namilo, like you're giving me less than before, right? Before I invested with you, I got the head. Now I'm investing with you. I don't get the head. Like you should think I should get more. Like my wife said, Amalei Ata Didi until now was my money. If I hadn't given you an extra benefit of the head, well, it looks like interest. Hasha should fan, but now we're partners. This is what you were asking about, right? We're partners. We're partners. My comras, Tarachna Tefei Porta, that I, put in more work. So then Amre Inshe, people will say, Stamarisa Lamari Ara Kamishabit Nafshe. That's what you do as a sharecropper. You do more work. Lasiya Raya, so that to find find the proper place for them to graze. So in other words, the sharecropper typically does provide a service to the investor or to the owner. So you can't determine like that's part of the deal. You can't demand extra like that you should get the whole head, right? That you should get the best part. Tana Rabban, Rabbi's time. Hasham behema lechavero. If you are uh, um, appraising the value of an animal for somebody else. And Right. So you have a case of you're going to give your animal to a shepherd to raise for half the profit, and you're appraising it. How long do you have to care for it before you can start dividing the profit? Right. So you're raising this animal. At what point do you say, okay, I've now raised it from birth to X months. Let's split the profit now. I mean, it's going to continue to grow, right? It's going to continue presumably to gain value. At what point can you say now it's time to split the profit? For donkeys, 18 months. Begodros kaftal chodesh. In small animals that you keep in a pen, like sheep or goats, 24 months. And if you want to force a split before that time, if you do by agreement, fine. But if the other party doesn't want, then you have to wait. But just so you know, looking after an animal the first year is harder than looking after it, is easier than looking after it the second year. Second year is more, it's a bigger animal, it requires more feed, more care, or whatever. My aval kamar was mean but, right? Ella, what Gemara says, let's read the Bryce this way. Lefi she'eno doma tipula shoshanazu, because the care that you're providing in the first year, right, is not so much. Like you agree to care for the animal, to raise the animal. The real effort there is in the second year, right? So you can't demand your half before you've done the hard part, right, of raising it in the second year. Tanida, we have another brisa. Hashem be'emel chavero. Ad mosai will topple bovlados. Same question, but here we're asking when do you have to look after any newborns? So you're looking after an animal and it has a calf or whatever, a baby animal of whatever kind. How long do you have to look after the baby in order to keep up your end of the deal? Bedaka lamed yom. A small animal, it's 30 days. Ubagasa nun yom. For a large animal, it's 50 days. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Bedaka Gimel Chadashim. Rabbi Yossi says, no, a small animal is 3 months, not 30 days, because it needs a lot of care, right? It's a small animal, it needs a lot of care. My Tipula Maruba, in what sense does it need a lot of care? Because it doesn't have good teeth yet, right? So you have to provide it with maybe the food that's ground finer or pre-digested or something like that. But after that time, you take from that time on, whatever you put into it, you get half the profit from that time on. Rav Nashe Bar Gada, Shalcha Mechsa Shelo v'Chatzi Mechsa v'Shel Chavero. No, I'm sorry, I should explain that better. Noto Mechsa Shelo, you take your own half of the offspring, v'Chatzi Mechsa v'Shel Chavero, and half of the profit of the other half, right? So you get 3/4 of it because you guys you agreed to split 50-50, but now you're also putting in extra effort for this newborn animal. So whatever effort you put in on your own half, that's great, right? You're looking after your own stuff. Whatever effort you put in on behalf of your partner's half, you should get compensated for it. So after the first 30 days or whatever the limit is, you are entitled to half of for the work you're putting in, you're entitled to half of the profit. Okay, so you get essentially 3/4 and the other guy gets 1/4 of
I
the
always say
improvement.
this is like the sharecropper above, who we designate as getting paid for his work, so he shouldn't get extra. Right? We said there earlier that the sharecropper, he's not
Because you only agreed to take care of the mother, right? You didn't know it was going to have a baby. Now that it had a baby, the baby is considered the profit. So good, you're going to split those profits, but you're also putting in effort that you hadn't contracted for.
Uh-huh.
So, putting in effort on behalf of your own half, of course you would, right? Putting in effort on behalf of the other guy's share, you need to be compensated for that. because it's outside of the original agreements. Rav Menashe bar Gada shakal machzor shelo v'chatzi machzor b'shel chavero. So Rav Menashe followed this rule. Also, coming to Abaye, and his partner took him to court to Abaye. So Abaye said, "Man palaglach," like he said to Menashe, like, did you, where's the evidence of that you have. Like you have to, after the 30 days or whatever the limit is, you have to say, okay, now it's worth $10. And then any profit starting from now on, we're going to split in whatever way. So like, where's the evidence of the split? V'yod, makom shenagu legadolhu. This is, Abaye says, listen, where we are in my jurisdiction, it's more like you said, that the custom is for the shepherd to look after the newborns even beyond the 30 days or whatever. And that's the custom here. So what are you even claiming? Like you don't get to claim against the local custom. There's a brisa that says whatever the local custom is, that's what you follow. Okay. Another case. There were these two kutim. The Avud Iska Bahadei. They did a business deal together. Azil Chad Minav Palag Zuze. One of them went and split the money, right? Below Dati the Chavre, and he didn't consult the other one, right? So he's like, okay, this investment is now worth X dollars. I'm going to split it, and I'm going to take my half and invest it further, right? So. And what he wanted to do was to keep all of the profits of the new venture for himself, right? So he's split. You had, let's say, $1,000 investment, and now it's worth $1,500. Great. So I'm going to say your share is $750. My share is $750. Now I'm going to take that whole $1,500 and reinvest it, and it's going to double. It's going to be worth $3,000. Now I want to say, look, I already decided you're getting $750. The new venture was all my doing. Also coming to Rav Papa. So they came to Rav Papa. Amrle said, "My nafkamina." Like, what's the difference if the money was split without your knowledge? Hachem Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman says, "Zuze command duplicate. Money is fungible, right? Money is money. It's not like it's a cow that you have to determine how much it's worth. If it's a term deposit, the amount is the amount, right? So one partner can take a share without consulting the other one because it's we know exactly what it's worth. Okay, so Lashana next year is Zabun Chamra V'Alei. They the same two partners invested in wine. Kamidach Palibla. And then the other partner decided, you know what, time to sell the wine, divide the profits, and then did the same thing. He reinvested the money. Asul Kame Rav, they came to Rav Papa. Rav Papa, Rav Papa said, Man Polyglach. Since when did you have the right to decide it's time to sell the wine? So this other guy says, I see you're after me, right? Rav Papa, like you've got something against me because he didn't see the difference. Like last year, you ruled for the other partner who decided unilaterally to liquidate the investment, and this year you're ruling against me when I'm the one liquidating the investment. You're still ruling for the other guy, right? Who's complaining that I liquidated the investment. Papa explained, "I got them. If this is the case, Vaday Tzarech Lo do I. I'm going to have to explain myself, right? Because usually a judge doesn't have to explain the reason for his decision, but here Papa felt because it looks like he's favoring one party. I'm going to have to explain myself. So he says, Zuze, in the case of money, Mishakil Tavi Vishavik Chasre, like money is fungible. Fungible is the wrong word, but like money we know what the value of money is. Like, is it that, like, are you claiming that he gave you bad money? Like, so the coins he gave you were deficient in some way? Amalei, no. Amalei, Chamra, Vika de Basim, Vika de Lo Basim, Kuliyam Yade. Kuli Aliyadi, the Eco de Basim, Eco de Lo Basim. In the case of wine, when you do a split, so everybody knows like one barrel of wine is not the same as another barrel of wine. Right? You have a whole industry of wine, which is based on, some is better and some is not as good. So in the case of money, I would say yes, the one partner can decide to divide the investment because we know that it's fair. But in the case of wine, you have to get agreement from both partners because it's not necessarily fair, right? You'll claim the barrel that you took is a better quality and you got more. Okay, that's why he ruled differently in the two cases. Gufa.
But wasn't there an
We said,
agreement with the money from the beginning? I mean, didn't the each one, shouldn't there have been an agreement that how much each one is going to get or what the 50% or 70, whatever it might be?
yeah, but the question is, when do you liquidate the investment and divide it?
We're talking
So
about the
one
money, the
forced the
case of the
hand of the
money.
other. One forced the hand of the other,
Well, how is
right?
it not, how not? I mean, if they had an agreement that it's X amount of dollar, X amount of profit, then how can one say, I'm going to take
No, he did. They
money?
did the 50-50. They split it 50-50 as agreed. The question was, when does that split take place? And if the money goes on to make more money, um, then what I mean, I don't quite get it either. Like it doesn't seem fair. But because if you're still using that money to make more money, then if you're using the other guy's half, then he should be entitled too. So maybe, I mean, I don't think this is maybe what's happening is that he took his half of the money and continued the investment. Um, well, okay, like let's take the example I said before. We each invested $500, right? So we got $1,000, and now after 6 months, it's worth $1,500, right? Um, so I come along and say, okay, that was great. We're gonna split now. 750 is yours, 750 is mine. Okay. But the money is, I think the way it's working here is the money is still in the bank. Okay. And then the investment continues to grow. And now I'm saying all that new growth it's all me, right? Maybe I was the one managing the investment or something. But I've already determined you're getting your 750, from your $500 investment. That happened on July 1st, and that's the end of our deal. And any further profits accrue to me. Like I don't quite get it because it seems like you're still using the other guy's money, but um, but maybe the agreement of sharing the profit has expired or something. Not sure
Is the
what's
Gemara
going
really
on
saying
exactly.
this? I mean, I didn't see that in the words of the Gemara. Is that Rashi or Tosfos?
Let's see.
That where you're saying that there's their extra money that he says you'll get your 750 and money's still remaining in the bank, and I'm going to continue investing it. I didn't see that in the words of the Gemara itself. So I'm just asking
I don't
if
know.
that's from Rashi or Tosfos.
Right? Um, I didn't see it in the words of the Gemara either. I was going uh with the commentary here. Let's see what Rashi says. Um, hmm, hmm, hmm. You have a good question. Um, but I'm not sure how else to interpret it.
I don't see any Rashi on this on
Yeah.
the side. I didn't look at I didn't the Tosfos. I don't know if there's Tosfos. I didn't look at that.
Hmm. Um, Okay, so the note in our scroll interprets it as follows. Misstated it a little bit. What he's reinvesting is the profits. Okay, he's taking the $500 profit and reinvesting that. Um, and so the Bryce that we had before says that um, you're entitled to um, all the profits from your half and half the profits from the other guy's half. That's what he's claiming. And that makes sense actually, because that would be the follow on to the price that we were discussing.
So what is it
Um,
again? He's
okay.
entitled.
So so we each invest $500, right? So $1,000, it grows to 1,500. And then I say, okay, now we're done. Um, now I'm going to take the $500 in profit and reinvest that. Now, who benefits from that, right? So following the Bryces that we had before, um, the $500 profit is 50-50 split between us, right? So my half of that profit, whatever it gains, is all for me, right? But if I'm investing your half of the profit, then and I'm looking after it, then I get half of your profit as well.
So it should have been 250 at that point initially.
Yeah,
So he's now
right,
taking that 500 and reinvesting it. You get your 250, but I'm going to continue. I'm going to get more because I'm investing your profit.
right. And I'm looking after it. So um right. So the only question is, did I have the right to take that step, right? To determine this is the end, this is where we split the profits, and now going forward, I'm now investing only the profits from that arrangement rather than the principal. Mm,
It seems a little bit strained. This whole argument. I mean,
well, when it comes to
where,
money, it's pretty strange, but
I mean, where does
um,
he stop? Where does he say, okay, now this is the time and I'm going to do it? And
well, that's just it. That is um, that's what we're discussing. Like, under what circumstances does one partner have the right to say, this is the end of our, our initial investment, and we're going to split the profits at this point. So, uh, you can do it unilaterally, according to this, if it's cash, right? Then everybody knows the value. But you can't do it if there's some reasonable basis for disputing how you do the split. Okay, but even so, it's like, why does one? I guess either partner has the ability to say this is the end of our deal. I mean, if the contract is for a specified time, then I don't think this would apply, right? Um, but if it's not specified, then maybe either partner can say, okay, we're done now, as long as the split is can be shown to be a fair split.
he goes on to invest the remainder. That it's just not really in the words of the Gemara. It's
Okay, fair enough. But in the context of the Gemara, that makes sense, I think, right? Because that's what we're discussing is this idea of reinvesting the profits. But you're right, it's not in the words. Gufo. So we said before about Rav Nachman. Zuze command polydamu. Money, cash is like it's can be considered already divided. Hane mile tavi v'tavi. That's if we're talking about now, I don't know much about the monetary system that we're discussing here, but if it's like good, maybe a good analogy would be different types of currency, right? Like, if we're dealing with US dollars, fine, but if we're dealing with you know, um, Venezuelan, whatever, maybe maybe that's not such good. Like you can't consider that all good money. Or tukule, maybe they're all like heavy coins or good coins or whatever. Like it seems like there's a there wasn't such a standard monetary system, and coins could have had different compositions of silver or other metals. It's not clear to me exactly what's going on, but the point is um, that you can only say that cash is cash if it's like standard cash, but if there's different levels of value of this cash, then it doesn't apply. Rav Chama would rent out his money for a fee, right? He would rent out a zuz for one pshita per day, right? So it sounds pretty like semantics, right? What is the difference between renting your money and lending your money for interest? I don't see the difference. And eventually he lost all his money. And Husavar, he thought, Maishna Mimara, what's the difference between renting out my money or renting out a garden tool? Velohi, but it's not the case. They are different. Mara Hadrabena, when it comes to your garden tool, when you give it back, you're giving it back. It's the principle is exactly what was rented out in the first place. Viadia Pachase, and you can see, like if I use it for a long time and it's somewhat worn out, you can see that, right? Zuze lo Hadrabenayu, but money, because money is fungible, I'm not giving you back the same coins that I borrow. I'm giving you back equivalent coins. And there's no depreciation that you can see in them. Therefore, that's the difference between money and goods. Now, I think this is actually kind of a fundamental point here. Like, because the real question is, why is it that you can't charge interest for money when you can charge a fee for rental? Why should that be any different? And yet it is. The Torah says it's different, that you can't charge interest for money, right? So I think this is just the beginning of an answer, of an analysis of that. But the the Gemara doesn't go too deeply into this, even though I think that it's a point that really deserves analysis. And the fact that basically, this whole Gemara has been dealing with ways around, how do you structure an investment so that it doesn't violate the laws of Rebus, kind of indicates the weakness of the premise, right? That, look, there's got to be a way for, basically for capitalism, right? For the capital to make money. So, but we don't go too deeply into this, but I think it's something that's worth fuller analysis.
I mean, is
Now
Rashi
we're gonna
asking a question here regarding the Mara, this garden tool? He says, "Hello, Rashai, ani laskir at Kli." Isn't that obvious that one can rent the?
yeah, which is true, right? There's nobody says that you can't rent a garden tool, right? So why should money be different? So what the Gemara tries to answer, which to me isn't quite, doesn't really hold a lot of water. Like I don't really see the logic here, is that first of all, money is fungible. So what, right? I mean, it's a distinction that that you can certainly, if you make that distinction, then it makes it easier to rule on particular cases. But it doesn't philosophically explain why it should be different. To me, anyway. Um,
Rashi wants to say this is like a garden tool.
no. The Gemara is saying
No,
that
when
there's a
Rashi
difference.
asked the question, I'm certainly permitted to rent my Kli. So is he really asking why shouldn't I
Right.
be able to rent my money as well?
He's putting that question, the words of that question, in the mouth of Rav Chama, right? So Rav Chama is saying, like, why, if I can rent my garden tool, why can't I rent my money?
Right, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah. That's what Rashi's saying. That's Rav Chama's question. But the Gemara says, Velohi, it's not the case, right? There is a difference, right? And then there's two differences. One difference is that you give it back, and you can see the you give back the thing itself, and you can see the depreciation on it. Whereas money, you can't. And that's as far as the Gemara goes in distinguishing between them. Again, it's not. I think it would be nice to have a little more analysis of why that should make a difference. Okay, Amarava. Shari Leila Inish Lamemar Leila Chavre, you can say to your friend, Helach Arba Zuze, here's 4 zuz. Osfe Liplanya Zuze. Now go and lend some money to somebody else. So in other words, you're lending money to a third party, and you're getting compensated for that by someone other than the borrower. The Rava says that's okay. Lo Asra Torah El Ribis Haba Milov El But the only Ribis prohibition is when the borrower pays the lender extra money. So that's interesting, right? V'amar Rava, and Rava also said, a person can tell his friend, take these 4 zuz, the leploni, leoltzfan zuze, and go tell a third party that he should lend money to me, right? So you're allowed to do that because my tama, why? Because the because the guy in the middle is just taking he's taking a wage for convincing the lender to lend the money, right? So the fact that so here the case is that the borrower is paying, but he's not paying directly to the lender. He's paying somebody else to facilitate the loan. So that is okay.
It's a broker, like a broker.
Exactly. The Abba Mar Breder of Papa, like the case of Abba Mar. Havashakil Ugna de Kira mi Kirai. He would take like wax, whatever wax balls from wax sellers. And then he would tell his father, lend the money, right? So he would take the wage for convincing his father to lend the money. So the rabbi said, like, this doesn't look right because sure, your son is a third party, but he's not really a third party. He's your son, right? So he said, Kol ki hai ribisa nechol. Rav Papa says, no, that's okay. It's a third party. He may be my son, but he's not the actual lender. I'm lending my money, not his money. The only ribis prohibition is direct transfer of funds from the borrower to the lender. And here, my son is acting as a broker for Shari. It's fine. So, in other words, he's saying it doesn't matter that he's my son, which until the day comes that the son becomes the heir, then it becomes more complicated, right? But my property and my son's property are separate; they're owned separately. The fact that we're related doesn't come into the calculation of rebis. Next mission: Shamin Parav Chamar. You can assess the value of a cow or a donkey or anything else that does work and you profit from its work, and you can give it to a shepherd to raise for half the profits without any requirements for paying him wages. In a place, as we saw just earlier, in a place where the custom is to, as soon as any offspring is born, you split it right away, and then you do it. In a place where the custom is for the shepherd to raise the young ones until a certain point. Yeah, he should do that. Shamin egel im imo. You can assess a calf with its mother, usiach im imo, or a horse together with its mother. We quoted this mission earlier yesterday, I think. Without they can come as a package deal without paying a wage to raise the child. Umafriz al sadehu. Now here's a new thing: you can increase the rent of the field. So rather than paying cash to you as interest, I'll give you some other consideration. I want you to lend me money, and so I'm going to change the rent of something that you're already renting from me, right? That I'm going to give you a benefit that is of value, but is not a cash, a cash grant. This doesn't count as interest. So you can imagine this is going to raise a whole hornet's nest of issues.
So if it raises the rent in the middle of the deal?
Yeah. In other words, if you lend me money, then you can raise the rent on the field I'm renting from you. As an incentive to lend me money, I'll pay you more rent. Got it?
Yeah, okay.
Rabbi Mafriz also there, you can increase the rent. What our mission said. Okay, so how does this work? Ruvain is renting a field from Shimon. Basara korim chikin l'shana, for a certain rate, 10 kor of wheat per year. V'yomer lo. And then Ruvain says to Shimon, Tainli Masayim Zuz, lend me $200. Va'afar Nesena, and I'll use it to improve my care for the field, right? I'm gonna use better whatever agricultural practices. But in return for you lending me another $200, I'm going to increase the rent, right? I'll give you, instead of 10 core of wheat, I'm going to pay you 12 core of wheat. Okay, mutar, that's allowed. But you can't do this with the rent of a store or the rent of a ship. Okay, now it looks like the reason is because, like in the case of the field, you're saying I'm going to improve the field, right? So there's a benefit. There is a benefit to the to everybody here, because the field will presumably um, produce more crops, but also the field will become more valuable, right? Because if a field that is producing more crops is more valuable. So this can be considered not a loan, all right, but like an arrangement in which both people profit, right? The borrower, like the guy who's working the land, he gets more produce, and so does the owner. He gets more rent, right, and more valuable land.
Does it work
But
both
when it comes,
ways? This
I'm
is a
sorry.
case where the borrower says, "Give me 200, and I'm willing to pay you more rent because you're giving me a loan." But
Mhm.
can it work the other way, whereas the lender says, "I'm going to charge you more rent"?
Well, they have to agree on it. So it doesn't matter who initiates the conversation. The deal is the same if they as long as they both agree.
I don't
We're
know.
not
I
talking
would
about
think
we're
that
not
in
talking
the
about
middle of the
anybody forcing.
deal, someone comes to, yeah, and like people object to it, but if the owner of the building says, "I'm going to charge you more rent after in January," here's he says, "I'm going to charge you more rent," and he says, "Well, wait a second, why are you charging me more rent?" I
Well,
mean,
you can only do that if the contract permits it, right? If we have a 1 year lease, you can't raise the rent on me in the middle of the lease unless we both agree.
oh, okay.
Um, okay, so Amar Rav Nachman said, Pamim shemafriz al chanus. There is a case where you can use this deal that in exchange for a loan you can increase the rent. For example, latsur batsura. If the you can have a case where you're using the money to improve the value of the store, right? Like you're painting on it. You're painting a mural on the store, so it's more attractive. More people will come into the store and buy more stuff. Or sfina, in the case of a boat, losses but iskaria. Like I'm going to use the money to do repairs on the ship. I'm going to make a new mast on the ship. Iskaria is a mast. Okay, so then the ship becomes more valuable. It can, I don't know, travel longer distances, or it's going to be able to be more durable, or whatever. So it's the same. It can be the same as the field. Chanus Letzer Batsurta, the Gemara explains further in the case of the store, renting the store, because people like to go into a nice store, right? You'd rather go into a recently renovated store on Fifth Avenue than a dumpy place on the Lower East Side. All other things being equal, of course. Um, and Sfina, Lasval Iskara, what's the story with the boat? Kevan de Shapira Iskaratzve, since you've got a better mast, Agratzve, so the rent is higher. Like it's now a better quality boat. I don't know anything about how a new mast improves the boat, but maybe it doesn't bend as much, or I don't know what, but it's improving the value of the boat. So it can be the same as a field. Now, Sfinta, the ship, Amarav, Agra Upagra. Um, the guy who's renting the boat, um, he's in for paying both rent and to maintain the ship, like if the ship gets damaged, springs a leak or whatever, then the renter has to fix it. Amrle Rav Chana Rav Asi Larav. So Rav Chana Rav Asi said to him, "Iagra, if he's paying rent, lo pagra, then he shouldn't have to pay for damages, right? Ipagra, but if you're paying for damages, lo agra, you shouldn't have to pay rent." Shasik Rav. Rav didn't say anything. Amar Rav Sheshes. My Talmud Shasik Rav. Why didn't Rav say anything? Lo Shmiale Hadatanya. Didn't he know this brisa? Afal Pisha Amru and Mekabelin Son Barzil Yisrael. Even though the rabbi said that you can't except Tzon Barzal assets. That's the assets that the wife brings into a marriage. You can't accept that for investing for half the profit. But you can accept that from non-Jews. So 1 second. So yeah, so Tzon Barzal, the term is usually used with regard to a woman bringing property into a marriage, but it means like you're there, it's an ironclad guarantee, right? That's the Barzal part. So in the sense that the value of the investment is determined at the beginning of the term. And you're the renter or the person who's taking the investment is responsible for that, regardless of whether the venture makes money or not. So you can't take this Tzon Barzil type of investment from a Jew on where you're promising half the profit. Aval Amru, but they said Hasham para lechavero. If you're assessing a cow and then you're renting it out to someone, v'amrlo, and you say Hare paras chasuyalit alai b'shloshim dinar, that look, I accept that this cow is 30 dinar value, right? If I give you back a cow that's less than that, I'll make up the difference. And in return for this deal, I'm going to pay you a sela per month as rent. That is allowed. Because you didn't take the value of the cow as a monetary obligation on yourself. Okay, so it's kind of splitting hairs, but because you're just valuing the cow at 30 at the 30 dinar, so that's no longer considered like a monetary obligation. But Gemara objects right away. Isn't that the case? Like, how is this any different? Like you're saying, this cow is worth $30. So just because it's a cow, how is that different than accepting the value of the money? Of the asset. What he's saying is, I'm accepting that this cow is worth $30, even if it dies, right? So that way you can give back the cow, even if it depreciates. Only if it dies do you have to give back the $30. Okay, so you're not. So it's a weird kind of deal. It's like if the cow dies, I'll give you back $30. But if it's still alive, then you just take back the cow, whatever it's worth because I'm renting it from you. So that's not really its own Barzil. That's not a guaranteed investment, right? Because if the cow is still alive but it's sick or whatever, it depreciates for whatever reason. You just have to take back the cow. So therefore, you're allowed to take to pay rent for this cow. Amar Papa also said Hilchasa Safina Agro Pagra. Yes, the rule is the halacha is that for a ship you can collect rent and the renter assumes a responsibility for the damages. V'nagu b'nei kufra agra b'shas mashicha, and the practice is that when you rent out a ship, you get rent at the time that you take control of the ship. Pagra b'shas shavira, and if the ship gets damaged, then at that time you can demand that the renter repair the ship. So Gemara asks, "Atu b'minhaga talia milsa." Like, do we really like if this is a rebus issue, then why do we care how people practice if they're practicing? If the renter is responsible for the ship, then how come he has to pay the rent? like just because that's what people do doesn't mean it's right. When it says Mishum de Masnisa Tanya Minhaga, that's what the Mishnah said, right? The Mishnah said the halacha depends on the local custom. So apparently the local custom can determine if something is considered to be extra payment in consideration of the loan or the investment of the asset. Okay, so we'll stop here
Well,
for
it seems
today.
if it's really, as you raised, if it's really ribbit, then it doesn't matter where it is done, right? I mean,
Right. So that's what the Gemara is objecting, but we end up saying that the Mishnah allows for common practice for it to be considered different than it looks, I guess, right? Like, you might think that this looks like Rebus, but this is it doesn't really answer the question satisfactorily. That's true.
how do you know if you're going to this community or that community, that the ship owners can do this, the workers do this? I mean, it can be very confusing. Either it's,
Uh-huh.
I mean, either it is or it isn't. I mean, if the Gemara and the Torah is setting a standard,
Hmm.
I don't know. It's a little bit puzzling here.
Yes, it is puzzling. I agree. It looks like the Rishonim do some handstands to try to figure this out. I invite you uh, to study it more in depth. All right. Have a good day, everybody.